Hello, how is everyone doing? I hope you're all enjoying this wild April ride. We've had quite a bit of astrology pushing us forward, helping us individuate, and allowing us to reach for higher knowledge, wisdom, insights, and yeah, just helping us expand like all of the knowledge that we've gained over the last 9 years came to a kind of climax, a final release. And it's like we were taking the rag and just wringing it out, right? I was just like watching and observing everything go by that were the final remnants of what we were holding on to and letting go of in that moment, what we had been holding on to and letting go of in that moment, and what we are stepping into as we move forward into this collective individuation process. So it's been really interesting to see how everything's been playing out for everyone, and there's so many amazing things going on for every person in my life. A lot of expansion, a lot of beauty, a lot of insight, a lot of new awareness. It's just like everybody coming into their fullness, and that's what spring is about, right? It's about the blossoming, and as the seed bursts, right, open, that's like a disruptive energy, but it's a really positive disruptive energy, and it soaks up all the nutrients and the water around it, which it then absorbs into its core so that it could shoot up towards the sun and really come into its essence. So this is like a time where we're coming into our essence, and that that process is going to look different for everybody because we're still breaking through, right? The cycles never end, and we're always learning. And I think that's the most important thing, is to be on the path of, to be a student, a constant life learner. So we stay open to growth. And so I'm just I put together something on paper, and I'm going to be reading through that. And I might add a few extra notes here and there as I go along. But this is what I'm bringing forth for everybody for this final, it's April 29th, 1:45 on a Wednesday, closing out the April chapter. And I think there's going to be a lot of continued growth, right through till the end of August. So the title of this is The Mysteries of Gate 57, for those of you that know, and Demystifying the Third. So we have to take another deep dive in for this one, because, the people that connect with me, we've come into our own in the sense where there's a lot of people that don't go deep in the world and don't have similar sensitivities or insight, and that's fine. But this will speak to the people that it's meant to, and the people that are on that are sharing the same kind of experience in the world, are this is who it's for. So we're going to dive deep, because everything we see in this world starts off as an idea, including the propagation, conception, gestation, birthing, and death of our ideas and creations. So we know that to bring something out into this world, we must first conceive of it, right? What happens in the surrounding realms, right, when we are conceiving these ideas, gets filtered through the mindscape, through the emotional body, the mental body, coming from the spiritual realms, and then we create it down here in the physical plane. So that's the process of creation here in this realm. It starts off as a spark of positively and negatively charged energy conjoining, masculine and feminine principle. The positive and negative is, I'm not referring to good or bad, rather to types of particles that are in opposition. The goal of sharing this information is to increase the overall comprehension of how we co-create anything here on the planet, and to demystify what concepts like forced breeding programs are, because this ties into this knowledge about co-creating and our interactions with each other and our energetic entanglements. And for people who are highly attuned, everything boils down to energy and energy exchanges. So it's this whole sharing is about, removing veils of illusion. And I want to share hidden knowledge that will only likely, be of interest to a few, but nonetheless. After awakening has begun, many linger for years, right, in the first phase of the alchemical process. An initiate stays in the blackening until illusions are dispelled. That duration, whatever duration it takes to clear out hidden parts of self, the bulk of subconscious material not yet brought into awareness, has to run its course and filter through. And we do this through all sorts of interactions in the world, energetic, conversation, otherwise. During this time, the initiate, during the blackening, projects everything out, right? Everything that's disowned within the self, both the bad and good aspects of self, that are hidden from the unawakened master, must come to the surface. Shadow work is just as much about unearthing the golden shadows, positive attributes that have been self-suppressed, as it is about revealing the negative traits, right? We prefer not to see and stay in denial with. And both of them are equally as powerful. If you suppress all of your golden, your positive attributes, it's equally as challenging to co-create what you want in the world as it is suppressing the negative. So healing the injustices we see happening in the world requires that all of us do a tremendous amount of inner work. Everyone must commence the journey of personal and spiritual development, which takes us through specific phases, and traces of the study can be found throughout the ages, often described, as the alchemical process. We are microcosmic reflections of the macrocosmic experience. And once the truth of that is revealed to an individual, they are pushed, they are forced, they are automatically sent onto their path to begin doing the inner work. Perspectives completely change for that individual once the journey begins. And that force, that spiritual initiation takes place. When collectives speak of the forced breeding programs happening here on Earth in the physical realm, they are attempting to heal the roots of energetic engagements that they did not consent to, ideas they didn't consent to, and entanglements, energetic entanglements with other souls that they did not consent to, that we share this realm with. So shamans can see these connections, and traditionally this deeper layer of energetic sight is what offers the necessary insight needed for the masses to increase their awareness of how our innermost realms connect to the world at large. The goal of sharing this information is to heal collective wounds regarding co-creation in this realm of the third order to support humanity's evolution. So we can observe that with personal and with collective awakening, it's a very slow process, right? Turning the mirror onto the self is the bridge that leads the seeker out of the blackening phase and into the whitening phase. We must turn the mirror onto the self to see our previous conditioning and false identities. But this requires that we first and foremost, metaphorically, yet quite accurately, burn to ashes and dissolve into an emotional container large enough to begin sorting and distinguishing true essence from debris. Nothing real can be extracted until it can first be seen and discerned. So once this process starts taking its course, we can start to truly face ourselves, and it's unless that initiation, that spiritual energy comes in, that individual cannot turn the mirror onto themselves. But once it does, this is the point when we realize that everything we speak about is first a co-creation, an energetic co-creation, a thought co-creation that we participated in. We can never speak on anything that we're not engaged with on some level of thought. If we do not have an internal engagement with it or an entanglement to it, it is completely out of our reach, right? So everybody's constantly working through this subconscious material with every output, everything that they contribute in the world, every energy, idea, thought that they enmesh with. This projection within the blackening phase of awakening is when we fight the shadows neatly tucked away within the subconscious mind that we actually need to resolve within our energetic bodies. And this can come in through past lives. This can come in through a variety of different, types of influences, energetic influences that we're magnetizing. As this process takes hold, we begin to look at things differently and finally take everything we see out in the world and then do our part of resolving its root causes within. If you feel a victim of some person or situation during this phase, you begin to find personal connections within to what those people and situations are teaching you, realizing that it's always reflecting something deeper within the self. Now, this can go from small to really big situations. Some of the lessons can be very collective and very high level. Nothing is purposeless. And the greater the tragedy, the more exalted the lesson. We are not given anything we can't handle. Even death itself has its place in the grand workings of spiritual evolution. No experience in this realm is finite, so everything is in motion within greater realms and forces of intelligence. And we begin to touch on that as we move through that blackening process and dig deeper, right? Move deeper into the self, into the root causes, which connects us to the greater cosmos. So to heal something we see happening in the collective, we have to align our strengths and actions to greater desired outcomes within the energetic constructs within. We have to delve real deep in order to see how those aspects of our inner and outer experiences correlate. And, that's where that third eye sight comes in, because, if we're disconnected from self, we can't feel anyone else. We can't feel ourselves, right? So there are many ways and systems to go about doing this. This is how we create the energetic blueprint within. It's then accessible to other souls to reach up and grab through the unified field. First is the spark of insight or awareness. Then comes the action that integrates that insight into grounded reality, which then creates another type of blueprint that can be solidified into the field for multiple tangible outcomes. But that initial spark can only occur when negatively and positively charged elements come together, right? This is why we see all of the difficulties between the masculine and the feminine, because everything happens in that charge between the positive and the negative. We all contain both charges within the self, such as described in the sacred marriage or the eros gamos, a process which takes place in the final phase of the alchemical process, the reddening, the revido. The sacred marriage of sun and moon only happens after the blackening, whitening, and yellowing, when in the reddening phase. The journey is long and challenges us on every single level of our being to grow real roots through fire, the destruction of false belief systems, false identities, and a natural reconstruction of self, capital S, as we nurture and weave our true essence that we've discovered back into awareness and thus into the world, whole, complete, and married within the self. This allows us to birth a third without the assistance of another, a projected version of the anima animus or some version of another dimensional false self, right? So doing the inner work and getting to that final phase of the alchemical process is what allows us to come into wholeness within the self so that we don't fall into victimhood, right? With projected aspects of self or the anima, the animus, or other versions of selves and other dimensional aspects, okay? Which we can call false selves for now. During the fermentation process, putrefaction of old concepts and ideas of the self make their final way out by allowing them to decay completely. This is the most challenging aspect of that blackening phase. What comes next is the rising of the phoenix, so often celebrated, right? Everyone knows this concept of the rising, the rising phoenix. But people prefer to look at the light rather than the darkness. And the darkness is, allowing that complete decay of all false narratives, all illusions. And this is the part that, people have heard me speak on where, it can affect someone's health. It can bring someone dangerously close to death because the ego holds on so tightly to that identity. But once it's released, it's kind of like you can look back and laugh, right? That's how ridiculous the switch is. You realize the holding on was, it was just based on fear, right? So after the rising phoenix, the rising phoenix is the outcome of having successfully completed the previous stages of the process. In this phase, an individual only walks towards that which can be grounded in the physical reality because they've come to understand and distinguish and discern all the different parts, and they know what soul essence is. They understand universal truth, right? Relative truth, subjective truth, like all of these different facets of truth that we can get lost in. So illusions, from other realms, including the astral realms, densities and layers that are surrounding us, all those veils drop and they are seen for what they are. Thus, they no longer carry weight in terms of valid feedback that one uses to establish themselves or their energy in this field, right? In this realm. And this is the true liberation, and an absolute necessary precursor to the actualization of one's spirit, soul essence into matter. And this is the goal. So once we make it through these different phases, we are not so easily captured, right? We can't be captured by propaganda. We can't be captured by flying monkeys and projections and all these illusions flying around in the field, which we're inundated with, right? Until we get to this place, and then when we do, it's like what is grounded in the physical reality is what is true, right? It's like what's left after everything is burned. That's the truth of the matter. So what is described, as the forced breeder program spirals out of the collective, still moving through the Negredo and into the Albedo and Citrinas, the celestial roots of that program can't exist in the Rubido. It can't exist in the reddening phase of awakening. From a shamanic perspective, when an individual is seeking sacred marriage within, but only in those first stages of that seeking, they fish out their energy externally to connect to souls that carry the opposite charge, ethereally a masculine or feminine counterpart, which they then artificially co-create a third essence out into the field, or in real life cases out into the world, right? So a mirror reflection of two halves having not done the inner work is what is the root cause of forced breeder programs. Okay, I don't know if you guys are following me, but that's the energetic root. So it's a mirror reflection of non-consensual agreements. That existing out in the world is a mirror reflection of non-consensual energetic agreements to ideas, thoughts, people, right? Energies. So the highest level of co-creation which can happen is between two incarnated souls that have come into union of opposites within themselves first, before they energetically come together to create a sixth, right? So instead of it being two unindividuated, uninitiated people coming together creating a third false breeding program, it's two initiated people that have gone through that whole spiritual initiation, which are both thirds themselves, and they come together, and that creates the sixth. So it's the 369 basically. This is lightning over thunder or fire over water type of configuration. These types of unions carry powerful energetic and physical co-creative potential, leading to real transformative collaborations, both with each other, and within the collective mind, and then offered out like on a golden platter to the world. I have witnessed individuals co-create powerfully with their projected anima or animus, but the difference is that it always ends with more destruction than it does positively impact, right? It's kind of yes, there is positive actions and positive outcomes, but it usually ends in more destruction. And that is because the whole system is set up so that we move through that whole process, through the 4 phases. So the destruction just brings people back through the blackening in order to go through that whole phase again, so that they can move towards the sacred marriage within. And Aries, this is all about individuation. This is what we're all being shown, right? This is why all the veils of illusions are falling in society, within people, is because we have to, this is the natural, this is the organic timeline to this spiritual initiation, this alchemical initiation that we go through, is the natural, organic, spiritual structure. And so, we're just always brought back to that point. And it spirals. So it's never a failure. It's always spiraling up, right? And we're always learning more every iteration. So nothing is a failure, no matter how much it feels that way or it looks that way to anybody. It is never a failure. It is always knowledge gained. So every energetic propagation, whether through ideas or other individuals, are a necessary part of coming into wholeness. Every experience, no matter how painful or uncomfortable, brings us closer to the sacred marriage within, but only if that person is willing to face every inner challenge presented as a gift, right? It's always a gift. Self-reflection is one of the most difficult tasks to accomplish. It is easy to see the other, to sometimes get a glimpse of the self in the other, but to turn the mirror onto the self completely requires a strong soul willing to face all parts of themselves, all the parts they've betrayed, the truths they've denied, and kept themselves from, all the parts of self desperately pushed away to avoid self-responsibility, owning their personal power, and reclaiming their soul essence, right? Everything we heal allows us to come into greater union with the self, rippling out into the world as though through a magical force, eradicating unhealthy co-creations, right? This is why so much changes around your field. So much changes when you are pushing through. When a flower pushes through the ground, right? Everything around it is forced to adjust to that movement. And, we're all adjusting to each other as we morph and grow, as we individuate, as we come into wholeness. Those on a mission to solve the case of forced breeder programs must first come into a level of self-awareness where they see where they are falsely propagating thirds with people and ideas that they do not wish to breed and co-create out into this field, right? Because we so easily fall into victimization with everything. But the truth is that we are always both victim and perpetrator, right? And we perpetrate onto ourselves, ignorance or lack of awareness. And in that process, we cry out victim. And sometimes it's very painful. And I don't want to negate anyone's pain because I've been there. Okay. So I know what it's like. I've been through a tremendous amount of pain in my life. And that is what has made me strong. That is what has given me certain resilience in the world. So we have to go through it. There's no other way. If you are a spiritual initiate, you experience the interconnected web of life in a very visceral way. And precisely because you can feel it viscerally increases your responsibility. This means high-level initiates into the mysteries cannot negate doing the inner work of discerning, right, correct alignment and energies for co-creative purposes of global proportions, especially. All of you who experience what I am sharing here already know and feel it resonating your core. You carry a special responsibility in this realm. If you can see, feel, hear all the energies that are co-creating what we see in this realm, right? That means you're behind the curtain. And if you're behind the curtain, then there's a certain amount of responsibility you have for managing those energies. So we are not given more than we can handle, but we must use it wisely if we're to continue evolving both on a soul level as well as assisting, humanity's spiritual evolution. Right now within this realm, we are experiencing an uprise of people embarking, right? Naturally being initiated through this personal individuation process. With that, we will all experience an uptick of people moving through transformation all around us. The framework of alchemy left behind in hidden texts provides a solid structure to work with in discerning what happens on both on psychological level, emotional, mental, and physical level during a spiritual awakening. We can lie to ourselves. People can choose to lie to one another, but we cannot lie to the gods, right? Just let that sit with you for a little bit. We can lie to ourselves. We can lie to others if we choose, but we cannot lie to the gods. We cannot lie to the higher force. We cannot lie to the universe, right? And that should tell you everything you need to know about how to orient yourself vis-a-vis your internal awareness. Like, everything is seen on some level. And that's what's running the show. Not what we see, not what we tell each other. It's what is. So to see clearly what it is we are co-creating, with whom and for what purpose, is so crucial to the outcomes we seek to fulfill in the next coming years. We must all sincerely look at the ideas we are propagating with, where they stem from, and what they will produce. We must see clearly what we are entangling ourselves with out there, then to constantly find. And okay, so we must see clearly what we're entangling ourselves with, like ideas, people, energies, and do the work to constantly find the roots, its energy source within. This is so big, I don't think people are ready to really understand this, because people find such comfort, in fighting the good fight, right? When ultimately they are participating in something that they, on some level, can speak about and disagree with. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We fight things externally when we feel powerless to changing them. Right? So that's why turning the mirror into the self is so difficult, because people need to come into their power first. We ought to learn about our inner workings and the mechanisms of the those interconnections to the outside world, to sincerely come into relationship with self and others, so we may start co-creating masterful designs out into the world. So this is what I'm going to bring forth. I have had a lot of tremendous amount of downloads about Gate 57 and asteroid Hella. They're actually connected. Gate 57, asteroid Hella are the same thing, expressing itself in two different systems. But the more people I speak to regarding these gates and and asteroids, people that have them prominently placed in their chart, we tend to all have similar experiences. So there's this like common language that's arising out of the study of these systems. And when people start to awaken to all of these energies that they're swimming in, and they don't have the structure, the mind can, begin to create stories about what it is they're feeling, right? Rather than understanding that we're coming into contact with people's blueprints, and everybody has certain gifts and talents, right? And so there's a lot of connections that I'm making there on that level. And if anyone would like to see if they have Gate 57 in their chart, you could book a session with me at inspiringplayfulevolution.com. And I'm laughing because I always say Inspiring Playful Evolutions. It's inspiringplayfulevolution.com. You can book a session with me, and I'll be more than happy to look for all of these different placements of things that I've discovered and learned over the years to help you better understand your experience with other people, with yourself. And I like dealing with people who, have the ability to intuitively penetrate the field and who are also hypersensitive to the energies in the environment around them with other people. And that's kind of my specialty. And so I've been getting a lot of downloads on this. I hope that bringing this forth helps, whoever tunes in to gain some awareness, some wisdom, and it helps further them on their own path through that alchemical process, because I know it's not an easy one. You can also book a session with me regarding moving through those stages. It is extremely helpful to be able to have a language to discuss what's going on, and that framework does provide it. So take care. Enjoy the rest of the month, 2 months left. Enjoy the spring, and hopefully we'll all be looking very different. I'm pretty sure that's where the energy is going. We're all going to be looking very different in the next few months. All right. Take care.